Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this Monday, February 8th for the Campus Weather Service weather briefing of the week. I am pleased to welcome Erik Pytlak, no stranger to the department. He's from the Bonneville Power Administration, and he is a former president of the GEMS board. If you have any questions during the webinar or during this weather briefing, please ask them in the chat or the Q&A. We have both active and we'll be keeping an eye on that as we go along. And without further ado, Erik, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
All right, I'll go ahead and get started. And I kind of knew when I picked this that this was going to be a challenging forecast. And it's living up to its billing. So I'm going to go ahead and share screen, Christopher. I just tried and it denied me.
Well, that would be, you know what? Let's try changing who can share to all panelists. Try that again.
Okay.
It's Monday.
Yeah, right. No worries. All right, let me figure out the best way to do this. All right. All right, so here we go. I got a lot of things loaded up here. So actually, I'm going to try one more. I'm going to try something different here. I got a bunch of stuff loaded up, so okay, there we go. All right, so interesting weather pattern. And just looking at visible satellite imagery this morning, here comes a little bit of cloud cover over Pennsylvania right now, but this is our next system that's going to make life interesting for Pennsylvania. I will tease out the models are a bit stronger and a bit wetter with this in the last 12 hours or 24 hours. Not a big system, but certainly a nice, well-defined shortwave dropping in. And of course, all the snow cover across the Midwest, as you're all aware of. This is an interesting little feature. I always my eyes usually perk up or perk in when I start seeing fog and low stratus spreading northeast like this, which means there is a little bit of moisture tap available with this system. So I don't think moisture is going to be a problem as this thing approaches Pennsylvania over the next 24 hours. But this is a nightmare pattern, mostly because you can almost see here the upper jet here associated with the polar jet, and of course that for lack of a better term, polar vortex, although it's not quite one, but that is a pretty good Arctic tap going into the U.S., but not the typical one. Normally, when we look at Arctic air dropping into the Midwest or in the eastern U.S., we have a nice big ridge in the west and a nice trough in the east and a nice negative PNA pattern, negative NAO pattern. And that's not what we have here. It's just general northwest to west flow or across the northern plains. And this is really tricky because basically any little perturbation in this pattern is going to spin something up. And but they're moving quickly. So it's really hard to get a really strong system to spin up in this pattern. I'm going to go to radar. There is some very light snow flurries across northern Indiana this morning. Nothing really forming up here in terms of precipitation, although you can make an argument there might be a little bit of flurry activity near light precip, light rain trying to develop here in Oklahoma. Here's a next disturbance coming into the Pacific Northwest, and actually it's been snowing across northern Idaho, western Montana over the last 24 hours. It's been pretty good snow in there. But we'll be watching this over the next 24 hours because I think this is the beginning of the development associated with that shortwave that will come across Pennsylvania into tomorrow. Here's something you don't see very often. This caught my eye this morning. You know it's a good Arctic outbreak when the temperature at Fahrenheit is the same as it is in Celsius. That is Calgary and is -44 this morning. Meanwhile, Pennsylvania temperatures generally in the teens, a nice chilly morning. And then you can see here this light snow starting to break out across northern Illinois, some flurry activity farther east into northern Indiana and Ohio. I think this is just kind of a very weak system. I think we're just going to be watching out for this, though, to start filling in and spread east as the day progresses. Upper airwise, 300 millibars. There's a nice 130 knot jet here, cutting across Pennsylvania. Actually, is a 145 knot at Pittsburgh. And then this area here where that shortwave is developing is in the right rear quad. So it's got a little bit of an upper level support with it. But here's the thing that's very interesting. Instead of a nice compact upper level low, it's just kind of this sprawled out thing, which means that any little disturbance coming along this jet is going to want to spin things up into very weak systems. They may not even have a surface reflection, but there is enough forcing aloft, and you have a tight baroclinic zone, now draped along this jet, that any one of these little ripples is going to generate some kind of precipitation. And unfortunately, the models are going to have a really hard time with this because they're moving fast, they're not very well defined, and they unfortunately can spin up fairly quickly and aloft anyway, and then you end up with a pretty good shortwave on a tight baroclinic zone, and if you've got any moisture nearby, that's going to generate precipitation. I'm going to go to 500. Again, you can make out the jet stream here, not your classic Arctic outbreak kind of jet. Actually, the best forcing for cold air to dump into the US is actually coming from the Yukon Territory down into Wyoming and Montana, and not directly into the Midwest or the Eastern US. So this makes it tough because it's really hard to shove the cold air farther south or for the warm air to try to come back north and try to equalize this. So you end up with this zonal flow, but it's a cold zonal flow. And again, weak little ripples along the front. And there's the 500 millibar moisture associated with that next disturbance coming in. Here's 700. Nice and cold over here, nice and cold here in the up in central Canada underneath that upper low. But again, even at 700, it's a sprawled out upper low. And again, here's you can make an argument, there's a weak little ripple here. You can see the weak little ripple here. And that's really going to be the problem this week, forecasting wise in Pennsylvania, is that any of these weak little ripples, there's several of them to track, and any one of them could produce precipitation with breaks in between. All right, so one of the things that's making this a difficult forecast too is for those who like long wave, northern hemispheric looks at things, this is a 3-wave jet stream pattern, in at least long wave, where you have kind of one broad upper level low here, another one here in the western Northwest Pacific, and then the third here over North America. The atmosphere does not like to be in 3-wave patterns, I like to say. It likes to be in something a little more stable like 4 and 5-wave. So this is already a pattern that's going to be really difficult to forecast. And this will eventually try to break down. And you can see how it's trying to break into little pieces here and there, going into the longer range. But the question then becomes how and when, and the spread, and of course, what the exact details are going to be. And look at this. This is just 144 hours out. And there's a lot of spread in the model here in the Western US on the backside of this, what is generally, the upper low over Hudson Bay, and little disturbances trying to spin up along it. And the models are going to have a really hard time with this all week long. I also know that weather challenges down here in the Southwest US in Los Angeles, which at first when I heard that, I was like, wow, that couldn't have picked one of the most boring spots in the country. But actually the weather here is going to be very interesting as well, because this pattern is onshore flow for Southern California. So, which I'll talk about here, the details there in a minute. But basically, even as we go into this weekend and early next week, this is a pretty active storm track. I can't really pick out any systems. Maybe you can make an argument that there's a pretty decent one here Saturday into Sunday, trying to come into the Midwest. And if that were to happen, then yeah, it could be a pretty interesting storm for the Midwest to Mid-Atlantic. But the spread is so large. again, my confidence in any one of these getting particularly strong or interesting is low, but not zero. The other thing I like to look at in a situation like this is there moisture available? And does it take a while to advect moisture close enough to Pennsylvania, or here in the Pacific Northwest for that matter, to precipitate? Because you could have a disturbance moving through, but if you don't have the moisture to work with, then you end up with just the cloud cover and, just kind of wimpy flurries kind of stuff. But here's the other issue I see is that, so here's our system coming in. This is integrated vapor transport, basically looking for atmospheric rivers. And there isn't an atmospheric river to really point at here in the short term, but there is some moisture transport as this thing approaches Pennsylvania tonight into tomorrow. So this caught my eye here. Yesterday, I really didn't think the system coming in on tonight into tomorrow morning was going to be any big deal. But now with that little bit stronger look to the shortwave and a little bit of moisture transport, I think the snow could be a bit more interesting for Pennsylvania. Still looks like a minor event tomorrow, but I think it's certainly going to be noticeable across the state in terms of snow. So, all right, so this is going into, let's see, this is later. Okay, so this system moves off to the east on Tuesday, but notice what starts happening here. The moisture is not that far away for any next system to come through. And we do have another one that's going to approach on Thursday. And now, again, keep in mind, this is the GFS. This is not the Euro, but there's still moisture nearby. And you can kind of make it out here, this surface trough trying to develop. It's kind of like an inverted trough. No really well-defined surface low that's nearby, but this is a little disturbing because, again, like I pointed out, we're in a pattern where any little ripple that's in this jet is going to want to maybe not spin up a surface low, but it is going to want to something spin up at the mid-levels, and the moisture is not that far away. So that's our system for Thursday, and that's going to have to be watched. Meanwhile, here in the West, this is really interesting. We do have water vapor transport trying to develop into the Pacific Northwest, and there's the Arctic boundary right across Seattle and Portland. So it is going to be a very interesting forecast here in the Pacific Northwest as we go latter part of the week. Meanwhile, here in the East, this moisture transfer, it's nearby. It doesn't take much to bring moisture into Pennsylvania. So vorticity, see if we can find anything on the upper air that's, maybe tilt the forecast one way or another in terms of certainty. And, there isn't, it's really hard to pick one out here. This is the system that's going to produce the light snow here tomorrow. Very weak. Okay, it's channeled. Then here comes the next one. Nothing really stands out here other than these weak little perturbations in the flow they're there. It's a question of exact timing, placement, when do they come through, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this is a little interesting here in the West. Where you have this upper level low dropping to the Southwest US, that could get a little interesting next week as it moves east. But again, confidence very low. Meanwhile, let's look at the Euro. Actually, now let me look at standard deviation. So this is the European, and this kind of tells you standard deviation, by the way, this is the ensemble standard deviation. So if you kind of picture the overall pattern here of this jet, basically here's the polar jet right about here. The standard anomalies basically kind of tell you, are you dealing with a timing issue, or are you dealing with a placement issue or a strength issue? And there isn't a lot. The models are in decent agreement, actually, in terms of the next 24 hours on where things are going to be. But then, first of all, look at the standard anomalies developing here in the West, especially up here in the Pacific Northwest. That's the strength of the ridge. Is that ridge going to be a little farther west or a little farther east? And that has an impact downstream, because now you get into Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and notice where the biggest standard anomalies are, right along the polar jet. So in other words, that there is a lot going on in this polar jet, and it could very easily end up farther north or farther south going into the weekend. And the certainty, of course, typically grows here in the extended forecast, but notice where the biggest uncertainty is going into the weekend from the European. And the GFS, by the way, looks very similar to this. The standard deviations on the heights here in Ohio and Western Pennsylvania by 18Z Sunday are 150 meters. That's pretty darn big. So what does that mean for sensible weather? So let me increase my screen size a little bit. So in general, as we go through the 36 hours, here comes our system coming through Pennsylvania. It is the next snowmaker. It's a quick hitter, just like the one this weekend that was to our south or to your south. And then here comes another one. This is Thursday. And there's Thursday's system. Very interesting look to it with pretty decent precipitation across the southern half of Pennsylvania. But again, I don't think it's a slam dunk, because all you need is the maybe the jet to sag a little farther south, and this misses to the south. If it jogs just slightly north, you have a completely different weather situation going on into Thursday. So I do think precipitation, the next round is going to be Thursday, and I think that could be a decent snow in southern Pennsylvania. But then after that, it is really uncertain, where the GFS is pretty dry. And then look what it does here as we go into Sunday. It's bringing a warm system into Pennsylvania. This looks like an outlier solution to me right now, but it does try to nose some warmer air in here with precipitation. So that could be a bit messy if that were to verify. But then I'm going to look at the European snow, and this is just to kind of compare and contrast. Again, I have no real lean on either model at this point, but I just want to show just two examples on how uncertain this forecast is, given just a slight perturbation in the flow, and you're trying to forecast these little mini ripples 96 to 120 hours out. So here's the European. This is precipitation, 24-hour precip. So here comes that system approaching for tomorrow, and notice liquid amounts are, 10th to a quarter of an inch, maybe a little bit higher in the Poconos and Laurels. So that I can't disagree with that. That moves off. And then here comes the next one. And again, this is the European, a little bit farther south, but if this happens, yeah, we have another snow event or ice heading for the mid-Atlantic, with southern Pennsylvania getting a decent amount of snow. And this is going in from, this is third Wednesday night into Friday. So, okay, so keep this in mind. This is the Euro. Again, southern 2/3 of Pennsylvania are at a risk of pretty decent snowfall. Here's the GFS. All right, pretty good agreement here. All right, that's nice. Here comes the next system. Again, farther south, but you notice that the axis of 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch of precip's farther north. That recedes off, and then look what happens this weekend. So we're dry Friday, Saturday, So this is like wintry mix of precip at 168 hours on the GFS. The Euro at 168 hours, practically nothing. So in other words, a really tough forecast this week without a lot of lead time on these individual systems until they get into the US. They're sampled for a while in the upper air network. And even then, the uncertainty is pretty large. So, all right, our friend Moss, one of the things that's interesting here is I kind of pay attention to this a little bit. I mean, here's the first system tonight, and coming across State College. It's trying to wring out, oh, interesting, about 2 inches of snow. Then here's that one Wednesday, Thursday. That's suggesting 4 inches of snow. And then here's that system on Saturday where it's trying to bring some ice into State College. But this is just the GFS MOS. This is not the national blend. Here's the national blend. A little bit of a different story here. Here's our system tonight. Not a lot of snow in State College. This says less than an inch because this is in tenths. But again, looking at the models, I think it's going to be a little bit on the higher side than that. But then here's our next system. This is the national blend of models, keep in mind. So it is blending the Euro and the GFS. Yeah, it's about 4 inches for State College in a couple of different waves. But boy, I don't know. Yeah. And then you go farther out in time, and there's that chance of precipitation for the weekend. Again, our Climo pops, 24-hour Climo pops are somewhere around 30% in State College this time of year, 40%. So you're almost getting to the point here where you can at least resolve a couple of systems here, but then after you get past Friday, you're almost forced into this climatology pop situation and waiting further developments, even though if you look at the national blend of models here, temperatures seem to be on the cold side in terms of highs in the 20s, lows in the teens in State College. But look at this. I mean, these standard deviations are really high. So 2, 3, 4, I mean, here the standard deviations are, temperature standard deviation 10 degrees on Monday. So very uncertain, tricky forecast for Pennsylvania. So I'm going to jump over to the Los Angeles real quick before I give my 2 cents on forecast wise. So Southern California, this is supposed to be a pretty quiet, well, it's really, this is their storm season down in Southern California, but this is a tricky forecast because here's the LA basin, here's LA area, and here is the, this is the San Gabriel Mountains. So LA is going to be this onshore flow off of the North Pacific pretty much all week. So this gets really tricky for temperatures and precip forecasting if you're trying to forecast between 0.1 and 0.01 for LA, because this is one of those situations where that onshore flow just continues. You end up with these little eddies near the Channel Islands. If the marine layer breaks, like the GFS wants to do today, you can get pretty close to 70 degrees. Okay, let's go to tomorrow. The marine layer does not break, highs near 60, low 60s. And by the way, this probably has drizzle in it, especially during the late night and early morning hours. And this pattern just kind of continues all week long down here where, all right, so this day the models, again, GFS is saying, well, we might break out a little bit, then not. Then Thursday, okay, maybe not. So that's a really tough forecast down there as well. A little deceptive down there. The low temperatures will be about fine because they'll be right around 50 degrees with the water temperatures way they are down there. But high temperatures there could be anywhere between 60 and 70 degrees across the LA basin, depending on how strong the onshore flow hits. So here is my, let me go ahead and, so for Pennsylvania, oh, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, so for Pennsylvania,
Eric, we're still looking at Firefox.
It paused for me. Oh, there we go. All right.
You may have to restart the share if you're trying to share a different window.
I am. Okay, that's great. All right, good call. All right, so here's my call for Pennsylvania. Increasing clouds, you're already getting that. Some snow showers up in Northwest PA with that weak little thing zipping across extreme northern Indiana, northern Ohio. Temperatures basically in the 20s north to lower 30s south. Then light snow spreads in tonight. Temperatures are going to be near steady because of that warm advection developing ahead of that feature. For tomorrow, I was thinking 1 to 2 when I did this yesterday when I started drafting it up, but now I'm thinking 1 to 3, just because the shortwave looks decent on satellite, and like you saw with the moisture transport, it actually isn't too bad. And I wouldn't be surprised if someone, the typical lucky spots in the Laurels or the Poconos, someone that sticks up above 2,000 feet. I would not at all be surprised if someone comes in with a 4 or a 5. I know this is below advisory criteria in Pennsylvania, and that makes sense to me. So a little messy tomorrow. And then Wednesday, you'll be in between systems Tuesday night into Wednesday with quite a bit of cloud cover, but then the parade continues. By the way, this is a little around 20 in State College. It'll be colder up at the teens up in the north with this. And if you get any clearing, with the snow cover, it's going to be down near 10. So a little bit of a tricky temperature forecast, but I think it'll be mostly cloudy going into tomorrow night. And then here comes late Wednesday and Thursday. It's going to be a snow event for this next one. And I'm pretty sure, just given how the cold air is in place, but it could be plowable in the south half of Pennsylvania. Low confidence. And if it's this low confidence, 48 to 72 hours out, that kind of says something, but I think that's fair given the forecast, the situation that we have. And then watch for any jog to the north. I don't think that's going to happen, but if that short wave, the next wave that comes in on Thursday has any strength to it, that's going to produce some lift. And that might move the boundary north a little bit because, again, most of the impetus keeping the Arctic air in place is actually farther west over the plains and the Rockies, not over the eastern U.S. Then the Friday forecast is very uncertain. It could either be a cloudy day with a few flurries or another snow event across the south as things clip along the flow. And then this weekend, I really don't know. It's one of those where I would probably go Climo Pops at this point, wait further developments. I certainly wouldn't go dry at this point. But I also don't see at this point, a strong system. I don't know if I buy the GFS at this point. In fact, I kind of don't, given the pattern that we have. But really, we're going to have to watch what's happening out here in the west. If that ridge ends up a little stronger coming up here into offshore, off the west coast, then there might be a little bit of room for that GFS to verify in terms of a system, a wetter, warmer system lifting up into the Ohio Valley. My most confident part of the forecast is below average temperatures for the next 14 days, unless, again, the GFS is onto something for the weekend. But if that happens, if that GFS does verify, it'll pull colder air back in. So it does look like a chilly 10 to 14 days in Pennsylvania overall. And then for the weather challenge, good luck, deep marine layer, and with a deep marine layer, any weak shortwave, that will deepen the marine layer. And instead of getting T or 0, you get 0.02. And now you have a busted precip forecast. The temperatures are not particularly easy either. If the low clouds and fog break early in the day, it'll be 70. If it holds on all day or if it drizzles, high near 60. And it's going to be really tough to do that time that from day to day. The low temperatures, though, just because of that onshore flow, when LA gets onshore flow, very much like here in Western Oregon, if we get onshore flow, the low temperatures are pretty easy to forecast. In this case, it'll be pretty close to 50 degrees. So that's all I have. A lot going on. Any questions?
And once again, folks, we have both the chat and the Q&A available for you to put your questions and queries and curiosities into. That's almost alliteration.
Anything you want me to share or any interesting? I wouldn't think I could bring up here real quick. Let me close things out just for giggles if you want to see European, let's do Eastern, Midwest. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Now, again, keep in mind, this is going to be the snow algorithm. So it's just a fat, dumb algorithm. So here's our snow event for, again, for
Eric,
tonight into tomorrow. Again, general 1 to 3.
Eric, we're still on PowerPoint.
Oh, okay. Here we go. All right. Thank you. All right. I'll get used to this. Actually, I'll get used to it after I'm done with the call. All right. Can you see that?
Yes, it looks fine.
Okay, there we go. So there's that, oh, maybe a 5. I could see that. Then here comes the next system for Wednesday, Thursday. And yeah, this is going to the races across West Virginia. I'm not that confident, but you can see here what it does here in Pennsylvania, where you know, a 4 to 8 is not out of the realm of possibilities, according to the Euro, across southern Pennsylvania, Wednesday into Friday. And then again, here's this weekend, nothing, where we'll go to the, let me go to the, okay, there's our next system. Here's our, this is the GFS. Again, pretty decent. It would be 4 to 8 across southern Pennsylvania, but a little farther north. Northwest kind of misses out on this. And then there's our system over the weekend that wants to dump 4 to 6 inches of snow in northern Pennsylvania and probably ice and rain over southern PA. So, all right, I see a chat, but I'm gonna have to get to it. Oh, Kristen, not a question, just a comment. 12Z NAM is sliding with the GFS for Thursday. Lord only knows that that will continue. Right, exactly. Yes, exactly, Marissa. Yeah, I didn't look at the 12Z NAM yet, obviously, but that's going to be kind of my big thing the next few days here. I will say here in the Pacific Northwest, we've got a snow threat here at low elevations, and we haven't really had a snowstorm here in Pennsylvania or in Western Oregon yet this year in the valleys. The mountains have done quite well, but we haven't really had one in Portland yet. Seattle's had a decent snow this winter, but out here in the Pacific Northwest, it's going to be a wintry week. And like I said, with the cold air over Western Alberta, that's going to drop down into Montana. We're going to have some -30 lows in there this week. So I just wanted to call that out as well.
That's a little chilly.
It is, but not untypical for an Arctic outbreak in Montana. So
we do have one other question from Kevin. Do you have any thoughts on wind in LA for the weather challenge?
Onshore, but that's going to be tricky too, because usually LA, you know, are you forecasting LAX or CQT?
Yeah, it's for LAX airport. Yeah.
All right. Well, it'll be onshore. The problem though is that anytime a weak little disturbance moves by, that wind can increase a little bit. So tricky. But again, LA, the one thing about LA is that when they're onshore, the direction usually doesn't change all that much. It stays right along the runways, like 250 to 270 kind of wind. But you can get like you can get a 10 to 15 mile an hour wind with onshore flow like this, especially if a weak little ripple goes by and deepens the layer. So good luck with that too. Direction won't be a problem. It'll be the speed that will get interesting, and definitely vary during the different time of day or night.
Well, just our luck that we don't have to forecast direction. It's speed that we care about in the weather.
Good luck. So. Yeah, yeah. It turns out that's a harder forecast than meets the eye. I mean, if you're excited about snow and 1/2 inch to 1 inch of precip, no, it's not going to be very interesting. If you're in with big temperature swings, no. But it's going to be tough from day to day.
Fun times.
Yeah. And so, for weather challenges, T is one category and 0.01 is another.
A trace of QPF goes in the books as 0 for the challenge.
Okay. Yeah. And that's the problem, is that they could very easily get 0.01. with these, so, or not.
Yeah, and the precip error scoring is done in tiers. So 0.01 to 0.10, for every 100th in that bracket that you're off, you accrue the most error points. Whereas if the forecast is, if you put down 1.38 inches and the actual is 1.57, you don't accrue as many error points as you would compared to if it was less than a tenth and you're off by 400ths.
Yeah, and I will say this is the kind of situation where that can happen in LA, where they, or not, because that's the problem with the drizzle there, is that usually it's 0.01, 0.02. I don't see a system coming in to give it much more than that on any given day, but yeah, onshore flow, it's very tricky in LA.
All right, well, I do not see any further comments or questions in the chat. So with that, Erik, I will let you go. Thank you all for joining us this week. And Erik, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good luck this week. Should be interesting.
When is there not an interesting week around here?
Well, this one's tough, though. This one is literally, you could have high impactful systems coming through and you're not going to have a lot of lead time. I think that's the bottom line this week. Like the one coming in tomorrow, that looked like maybe an inch a couple of days ago. And now it's looking like, oh yeah, that's a 1 to 3, maybe an isolated 4. And then the one on Wednesday night, Thursday, plowable, maybe, or misses to the south. Good luck.
We shall wait and see.
Right.
Once again, thank you all for joining us. This briefing and all other briefings will be archived on the Campus Weather Service YouTube page at youtube.com/Campus Weather Service. That'll appear a little bit later on today. And next week, we will have AccuWeather meteorologist Tyler Royce joining us. So be sure to tune in for that. Same time, same place. We'll see you all next week. Have a great week, everybody.
Have a good one.